Today we're going to take our first dive into working with the basics of HTML. Key thing to keep in mind with HTML is that it is a structural language. That is, it's designed to provide the structure for the page. It is not a language that is used for design. It is not a language that's used for interactivity. For those, we'd be using cascading style sheets or CSS and JavaScript. But for right now, the main thing we want to get a grip on is basic HTML page structure. And one of the things that is helpful in doing this is to think of this little graphic. If you can remember these parts of your body, the head is from the neck up and the body is from the neck down, then you've got a good handle on what we're going to be doing here. Especially if you think about how those parts of the human body work. First, of course, is that we only have one of each. And if you try to make two head sections or two body sections in an HTML document, it's going to be pretty freakish and not work for us. The other thing is how those two parts of our bodies function. Our heads are used for thinking, and people can't see what's going on in our head. Our bodies are used for activities, and the same thing applies to HTML. The head section of a document is stuff that does not appear on a page, but instead gives directions to things like browsers and search engines. The body is where everything happens, whether it's text, whether it's graphics, videos, JavaScript, and so on. So we're going to start first by giving the browser a clue of what we're trying to do here. And we do that by using the doc type element. All this does is tell the browser to get ready for an HTML document. So one concept to keep in mind is that an HTML document is basically a recipe. And just as if I gave each of you a recipe to follow and we all brought them to class and tried them, they would be different. Same thing goes for browsers. If you use Safari or Chrome or any of the other browsers available, they will handle things a bit differently. But this element starts by saying, hey, it is an HTML document. And speaking of browsers, you don't want to use Internet Explorer. You will definitely have problems if you use Internet Explorer. The best browsers to use, Chrome and Firefox, although Safari is pretty good as well. Okay, so we've done that. So the next thing we're going to do, and this may seem redundant, but we're going to say this is an HTML document again. And then we're going to go down a bit and we're going to make sure we remember to close the HTML at the very end. And then we're going to set up our two sections. We're going to start up top, just as with the human body, with the head section. And we're going to close that. And then we're going to start with the body section. And we're going to close that right before we close the HTML. So what goes in the head section? Well, the first thing that's going to go in the head section is a title. And as I said before, nothing in the head section shows on the page, but the title, whatever you put here, shows in the little tab at the top of the browser. We want to pick a title that gives the reader a sense of what's on the page. We also want to pick a title that uses keywords that'll help with search engines. So a title such as My Homepage would be a terrible title because no one is going to Google and saying search for, quote, my homepage. So we don't want to use that. So we want to use something that, for instance, would use our name and what this page is helping us do. Again, thinking of keywords here is important. All right, the title section is taken care of. We're then going to insert 2 meta tags. There's a bunch of different ways we use meta tags, and meta tags are a little different from other tags in that the meta element requires only 1 tag. We see here HTML we open and close, head we open and close, body we open and close, but meta we don't do that because everything's contained within the tag. So we're going to set up 2 of those. And in each of those, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. I'm going to borrow some meta tags from the site W3 Schools and just paste it in here to save a little typing. So notice each meta tag has the same structure. Meta is the element. We have an attribute name, and then we have a value. We have the attribute content, and we have a value. So what do these 2 names mean? Well, description, if you do a Google search, whatever comes up in the Google search is what's in the description section here. If you don't have a meta description set up, what comes up in a Google search is just the first couple sentences on a page, and that doesn't necessarily tell the reader what the page is all about. Keywords, same idea. What keywords would a person be searching for to find the page you're building here? So in this case, it just so happens that this is fairly good for what I'm trying to do with my page. I'd probably stick my name in as another keyword. But so these are for the search engines mostly. They'll help our pages be found. Okay, so then we go to the body tag. And up to now, if we went and we previewed this in the browser, we would see nothing. And I'm going to, before we start in the body, I'm going to get you in the habit of saving your files regularly. So we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Save As. This is really important. So when we go to Save As, we're going to go, in this case, I'm going to use my documents, and we're going to change this to all files. Or if you have a TXT extension on it, that's not going to work for you. And we're going to call this, for instance, index.html. And it says, do you want to replace it? And I'm going to say yes here. And boom, we're good. So in the body, we have the header tags H1 through H5. We really only use H1 through H3 because anything smaller than that is pretty much the size or smaller than our body text. So these are ways of organizing our information on the page. If you think of term papers you did and you use Roman numerals and letters and stuff like that, that's kind of what the headers do for us here. So we're going to put a header in, and the header can be the same words that's in your title. The difference is now this is going to show up on the actual page, and again, we want to use keywords because headers get a lot of extra love from the search engines. So header looks like that. At any point, we can go to File, Save, or just Control S, and then we can go over to a browser and we can open this file in the browser to see what it looks like. So for instance, here I have the Chrome browser. If I do Control O for open or Command O on a Mac, it will ask me what file I want to open in it. So in this case, I'm going up to my documents, I'm going to go to that file, and I'm going to open, and you can see right now there's 2 things. First, we can see the title up here, and here we can see the H1 down here. So if I go back over here, next thing I want to do is put a couple paragraphs. Once I do that, I'm going to do Control S to save again. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to go back to the browser and I'm just going to do a refresh on it. We only have one paragraph. Why is that? Well, HTML really doesn't care about spaces in text. It cares about spaces in places like here. If you put an extra space in or leave a space out, here for instance, that's going to cause problems. But in text itself, it just doesn't care. So it doesn't understand that we wanted paragraphs here. So we have to use the paragraph element, which is real simple. We start with the P in each case. And we end with a /P to close each paragraph. I'm going to save that again. I'm going to switch over to my browser. And I'm going to refresh. And boom, now we have 3 paragraphs there. So what if we want to add a little style to those? If we want to make things bold or italic. In the old days, we used the B tag and the I tag, but those are not used any longer. They're called deprecated. The reason's a simple one. The new replacement tags we use are easier to think about in terms of styling when we get the cascading style sheets. They don't have to necessarily just be bold or italic. They can be different sizes, different colors, etc. So we're going to use those right now, and at this point we don't have a style sheet. But if we want to make this bold, add a few paragraphs, for instance. If we want to make that bold, we're going to put it between the tags strong and closing and then if we want to make this italic, we're going to use emphasize and then we're going to close emphasize. Going to save again, going to jump over to the browser again and refresh, and now we can see we have our bold there, we have our italic. So we now can get rid of the extra spaces we have in here and save it one last time, and we've got our first HTML element. We're not going to win any awards for web design, but we have our basic structure down here, and that's where we need to be today. So next class we're going to get a little deeper with HTML, but in the meantime practice, do the Lynda tutorials, try the exercises in the textbook, and I think you'll find that this comes a lot easier to you than you might have anticipated. If not, shoot me a question or chat with Sarah during class time on Wednesday.